I think we shall start. First of all, in order to fit in the time scale, I invite all esteemed speakers to limit your presentation by 8 minutes. It's enough time to bring the main idea. All other things could be discussed during B2B and coffee break. Please keep quiet because it will be difficult to speak. If you do not mind, we shall start. Prospects for renewable energy development, expert evaluation, international experience. It is very interesting. We shall start it from the most interesting presentation, as I see it, because it opens quite a new approach to resolving the problem of the sector that have not been resolved yet. Let us speak openly. Agency of Energy Efficiency already mentioned what should be done. Heat credit should be taken to modernize. Engagement of private capital for modernization. Yes, ESCO. Whether there are other sectors like industry, transport, and many other sectors that don't have sufficient transparent mechanism for support. We don't have that yet, and therefore, Chairman of State Energy Efficiency Agency, Mr. Savchuk, will speak about formation of guaranteed resources for financing energy efficiency of renewable energy project that we start modernizing all sector of economy. Please, Sergei, the floor is yours. I thank you, dear colleagues. Once again, I welcome all of you who were here in the morning, who joined us right now. And now the question is how to modernize multi-story building, how to develop renewables. A very important sector is industry. Please draw attention to it. According to the National Action Plan on Energy Efficiency, we must reduce consumption of energy by 9% by 2020. And reduction of final use by industry must be 1.6 million in 2020 as compared to figures that we have this year. How should we move? Where shall we take money? How can we force enterprises that use resources to invest money in energy-saving projects? The answer, at least in the countries that signed Paris Agreement, is uniform. In 2015, our president signed Paris Agreement. In 2016, Parliament ratified it. All countries who want to reduce consumption of energy, they reduce emission of CO2. Only then enterprises and companies are interested to use these resources. Look at the map. The highest tax for CO2 is Sweden, 118 euro per 1 ton. Switzerland, 77. Poland, the lowest tax, $1. But Ukraine is below. We have 0.01, 100 less than the lowest figure, Poland. And let us look at correlation. Countries where CO2 tax is highest, share of renewables and energy consumption is the lowest. And share of renewables is the highest. Countries that have high tax and high energy consumption is Sweden. No, Norway. Norway. Oh, no, not Norway. Iceland, 0.52. In Iceland, They put heat pumps from hazer, therefore their energy is expensive. But they have 70% of renewables. Our task in Ukraine is to think, how can we, through taxation of emissions, to force our enterprises to introduce renewable energy and reduce consumption? We have studied experience of Denmark. In Denmark, there is a tax for 1 ton of CO2 emission, 23 Danish crowns, about €7 per ton. If a company concluded an agreement for energy management at this enterprise, if company implemented energy efficiency project when concluding agreement with Danish Energy Agency, they have possibility to get money for energy efficiency, and this money is used in such a way that the tax is reduced from 23 to 3 Danish crowns. That allows and stimulates management system, controls spending, energy efficiency through Danish fund, and that reduces harmful impact. The conditions for getting this money from the Danish fund, that is getting revenues from the CO2 tax. They can implement energy efficiency and renewable project and invest this money. What is the idea in our country? We must do something with CO2 emissions. I don't speak about environment and impact on the environment and our health, but in order that our industry, that is manufacturing agricultural product, food processing, producing electricity from coal, you know how high emissions are. Aluminium companies, they all now consume traditional energy resources, while paying 37 kopecks for 1 ton of emissions. If you make tax at the level of Poland, at least €1 per emission of CO2, that will allow us to accumulate money at particular fund. There could be a separate line in the budget. That could be quite considerable money, several billion hryvnias per 1 year, which will stimulate company for reducing CO2 emissions and pay less tax and introduce the energy efficiency project. On the other hand, we shall have revenues to this fund, and we would be able to use this money for financing of the project. Same scheme as heat credits are used now. Companies pay for emissions of CO2, then banks issue credits to these companies for modernization, and then money of state budget comes as a compensation upon production of reform. So same system could be applied for industry, with the only difference with heat credits. Up to now, we don't have sources of financing. We are asking Minister of Finance to give us money for that, but there is not enough money in the state budget. But revenues from CO2 tax is a guaranteed revenue. How much can we get per year? If you pay €1 for CO2 emission, it will be 4.7 billion hryvnias. And each of you can ask how this money will be taxed. At the input, each company knows how much gas or coal they use if they produce electricity. And there are relevant coefficient of emissions, both from natural gas and coal and oil products. If it is €1, we shall get 4.7 billion hryvnias per year, compared with the figure for heat credits that are available. 4.7 billion hryvnia, it has been much more money, powerful resource for energy modernization of big enterprises that are consuming about 33%. And how much higher will be the price only for gas by 1%, for coal by 3 to 6%. But coal companies are not working very efficiently. Coal mines are closed. Oil products plus 0.5%, electricity plus 2%. So price will not be much higher, but we shall get targeted funds that could be used for energy efficiency, not being lost in the budget. Use of target fund. What for this money will be used? What is the objective? To raise competitiveness of economy. Each enterprise, while consuming less energy, make your product cheaper. For what purpose do you use this money? You will reduce consumption of energy and fuel and stimulate use of renewables and alternative fuels. Areas for which this money from the fund could be used. Not only big enterprises that produce electricity, they could be transport companies. If ordinary taxi fleet wants to buy electric cars, they can use money from this fund. Communal enterprises, installation of energy efficiency lighting, for instance, sanation of your houses. All actors of our economy can ask for money from this fund. Agency of Energy Efficiency declares the new approach, the new idea how to reduce consumption of energy. Apart from reduction of consumption from residential areas or private houses, ESCO budget sphere with ESCO mechanism functioning, renewable sources of energy, where we have green tariff system and long-term agreements. This year we want to take new area, energy efficiency in industry, and we shall rely upon revenues that will come through payment for CO2 emissions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Sergio. Dear friends, the most essential focus here. From today, we can count that energy modernization of industrial enterprises and necessary energy efficiency growth had started, and moreover, state energy agency and Danish experts today have offered new initiative, and as of today, Verkhovna Rada, two committees of Verkhovna Rada had received this presentation. They are supportive of this idea, and very soon these two committees will submit new suggestions to the new budget code, and we will start to implement this initiative in this in our budget. Unfortunately, during the last years, this all the attempts to decrease energy consumption, they resulted in nothing due to improper implementation. We hope that today we will have a good launch of another new initiative, and we have all the signs that amendments to the state budget will be made, and that they will secure necessary budget revenues, which will be directed and allocated particularly into thermomodernization of in industry. I am very pleased to invite to the microphone Ms. Diana Karsakaite, International Experience of Markets expanding for alternative fuels production and consumption from USAID Municipal Energy Reform Project.
I'm speaking on behalf of Municipal Energy Reform Project, USAID, one of international donors who is also supporting this important event. I was asked here to speak about incentivizing experiences in different countries for consumption and also production of renewable resources. And I would like to start with, it's not working, with a very important achievement of Ukrainian government, adoption of new energy strategy until 35, which lists very positive signs about incentivizing, about aspiring and determining to get more and more renewables in economy and to base the increase of renewables on competitive terms. So in this regard, it's important to understand that increasing of consumption of renewables should go in parallel with increasing of production of renewables. In other words, the demand shall meet supply, or supply shall meet demand. Basically, it's not working. Maybe you can go with наступний slide. Thank you. No, it's not working. If we are about to arrange some framework for supply to meet demand of renewables, it's very simple to show as a balance or equilibrium of two. But basically, наступний slide, it's equilibrium of many steps and many decisions. In order to have 25% of renewable within the economy in coming years, much to be worked about. And as far as our project is about district heating and municipal energy, since this point I will concentrate on municipal energy. Next, please. So the setting for incentivizing comes as a play of many forces. First of all, very well-defined goals, which we have finally in Ukraine. Also regulation, also operations by entities active in this sector, the financing resources and terms, and also the types of consumption and information support. Next, please. As several examples, I wanted to quote a couple of cities in Sweden which very clearly define their goals to have 100 renewables in their municipal energy systems by certain year, but in fact it's not really depending on the size of city. Here you can see very small Polish town which also already is operating 100 renewable resources in municipal energy supply. Next, please. So it's very important to have goals. Regulation is not less important, but maybe equally important to achieve the goal. And in Ukraine recently there was an announcement that much of regulation goes to municipal level, meaning that in fact municipal authorities are empowered again to make the incentives to have more and more renewable in their municipal economy. And here also I wanted to cite a couple examples from Baltics, which regulation allowed to reach impressive results within 5 or so years, applying specifically regulatory decisions or solutions for incentivizing renewables. Next, please. At operational level, as long as municipality owns entity, which is a case in multiple cases in Ukraine, the municipality may act as the one who actually employs renewable and this way consume the renewable. Next, please. The availability of different financing resources. Here cited examples of different types applied in different countries in Europe allow also to choose and to tailor if it is possible or best suitable for local conditions, but also what is not listed here and is applicable to Ukraine. It's huge donor resources for renewable energy installments. Next, please. Information is not less important because with information spreading, we are building or developing a renewable consumer of future. So one example is here, absolutely fascinating international school in Copenhagen, and another example is again from Denmark, sounding like fantastic things, solar district heating, but nevertheless there are business cases in Denmark, so why not to be business cases in Ukraine, which is more solar than Denmark. Next, please. Getting to another side of the picture, that is supply side. Again, in Europe we have very different types of incentivizing and organizing the market of biomass and biofuels, and in some cases cooperative types of market organizations are present, as there is a society oriented to community and cooperative business. Next, please. Next, please. And in other cases, we have very clear rules and regulations how to make biomass as residual biomass more available to those who are producers of biomass, this way doing good for production case and also doing good for waste usage case. Next, please. The means how to connect the consumers, district heating companies, electricity companies, and suppliers of biomass, that is producers of biomass, is a matter of question. And in those countries which are not very widely using the cooperative or communal solutions, they use other electronic trading solutions, and here are several examples. One of them is Baltic example, but specifically I wanted to draw your attention. Yesterday I checked one of these worldwide exchanges, and in Ukrainian case the supply is something like 300 or 500 tons. At the same, the demand would go up to 30 or 50,000 tons. So this is a clear indication that today production is not high enough to meet the demand side, and we need to work on that. Next, please. So concluding remarks would be that in fact district heating is an asset for Ukraine, and basically this is a first potential candidate to contribute very, very significantly to increase of renewable share in Ukrainian economy. Even more, when we are speaking about energy, the district heating is the one which is the most important for consumers, for residential consumers, if compared to electricity, gas, etc. So the solutions how to increase production of renewables and also in parallel increasing the demand for renewables should be based on long-term interest, not short-term interest, but also the consumer should not be forgotten, meaning that the consumer pays all the bill. And while developing solutions to increase renewable share in economy, we need to be careful that the conversion of fuels would not increase the final bills. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now I invite Mikhailo Maloshenko, Deputy Head of State Committee of Standardization, Head of Department of Energy, said. Mikhailo, we all know that Belarusian technical achievements are high. Focus on what you can help Ukraine with. Thank you for the invitation to take part in your forum. Next slide, please. Dear colleagues, Republic of Belarus, same as Ukraine, is dependent on hydrocarbons supply from abroad. Consumption of natural gas is more than 70%. Only 20% is supplied by boiler fuel of internal production. Out of 70%, more than half is biogas and peat fuel, because at the government level in Belarus we adopted a policy where you can substitute natural gas with local fuels. It is possible. Where there is no heat production with generation of electricity, there we substitute it with local fuels. Here you can see the graph. In 2015 and 2016, about 6,000 energy sources used local types of fuel. About 6,000 facilities for heating. We are planning to increase it in the subsequent years and build about 130 energy sources more. Next slide, please. In system of housing and utility sector, starting from 2003, capacity of energy sources has increased 6 times. More than 50% of heat energy in housing and computer sector is produced using local types of heat in Vitebskaya, Mogilovskaya regions. More than 50% or 70% of all heat energy is produced using biofuel and peat fuel. If we make comparative analysis, production cost of heat energy using different types of fuel, this slide is small, but still you can compare the size of the first and third and fourth columns. Despite the fact that biofuel, well, it should be extracted, it should be produced, it should be delivered to energy source, despite the fact that equipment that is used in biofuel is more costly than equipment that uses natural gas. Its production cost of heat energy with the use of biofuel is 20% less than production cost of heat energy using natural gas. Even in the quite beneficial conditions that are provided in the Republic of Belarus, production cost of heat energy using peat as a fuel is 30% cheaper compared with natural gas. Next slide, please. In order that we use completely the available resources in our country, in the Republic of Belarus, we started production of our own boiler equipment. 5 big producers of boilers: Belkotlomash, Komkon, Komunalnik, Belozerski Energy Equipment Factory, and Brest Factory of boilers. As you see, we manufacture equipment ourselves. We have healthy competition that allows our producers to improve quality of projects in order to be competitive. If initially people looked at that skeptically, saying, oh, biofuel, wood, crust, chips, it's a step backwards. But now sources that use biofuel, people wear white gowns and white hats, so all is clean and efficient. This is the boiler plant built within 6 months only, but the capacity 44 megawatts, it seems to 8 megawatts, 4 boilers with 4 megawatts. It took 6 months to construct it. We implemented our first pilot project using boilers produced in Belarus. Many power plant in Lunevets town. Here we see only steam turbine producing gas. Can I ask you, I see very good projects, but in housing sector, how many facilities use natural gas and how many of them use natural? 50-50. What are your plans for the future to reject Russian gas 100%? 100% is impossible not to use natural gas, because natural gas must be in the balance of gas mixture. Without natural gas you cannot generate electricity. Without natural gas you cannot create quite flexible sources. While we are planning to commission nuclear power plant in 2020, nobody cancels maximum the peaks in the morning and in the evening. Without that, energy system cannot function. But ideal ratio of local fuel and imported natural gas, 80%. Yes, we can achieve 80%, both Ukraine and Belarus. Not less than 80%. That will happen during our life. Yes. In order to use effectively our own fuel to extract and produce this, we use old wood processing equipment, and now we have chips cutting machines, wood cutting machines produced within Belarus itself. Now you can see Republic of Belarus and Ukraine possess huge reserves of peat fuel. We are producing boilers equipment that use milling peat. These facilities work in fully automatic regime. 14 peat enterprises provide enough peat fuel to residential housing. Now the priority is not the peat briquettes, but milling peat, because production cost is much less. Against old Soviet equipment, peat producing equipment still work. We use this equipment for manufacture, transportation, drying, and preparation for burning. Practically all energy sources produced in Belarus, that work in Belarus using local fuel, they get financing from the Republican budget. Our energy sources, we don't have commercial producers of heat that provide heat energy to population, and housing sector is trying to get away from natural gas. Even the production cost of energy using natural gas is equal to that with the use of biofuel. Arithmetic is simple. For natural gas, you pay money in hard currency to foreign producer, to foreign country. By biogas with equal amount, the tax come to the revenue state budget and jobs are created in the country. Starting from August this year, we have designed financial and economic system, financing and construction in the territory of Ukraine. We build energy sources using wood and peat fuel. Bank Republic of Belarus and Ukrgazbank take part in this project. Cost of credit money from 1.5 to 5% interest. You can say, what is new? What is of interest? What can you do for Ukraine? The matter is that having this scheme, Republic of Belarus compensates up to 8% of credit rate to non-resident of Republic of Belarus. That means if credit money costs, say, 8% annual interest, Republic of Belarus compensates all this percentage. But take into account heating credit from Ukrgazbank, this financial scheme can work very efficiently. For final user, it will be very beneficial from economic point of view. What else I want to say in conclusion? Dear colleagues, we have great experience of creating fuel sources using natural fuels. You have also big experience. We can work together, meet more often, and exchange our information. Thank you very much again for your attention, and thank you for invitation.
Thank you very much. I know that you will need to go to catch the flight, but we are very grateful. When we attended Chernigov's describing ESCA, they answered to us, we would like to have ESCA for using our peat fuel stocks, and we should be able to use ESCA based on peat fuel in Chernigiv region. We also would like to use not only peat fuel from our region and our boiler production. Maybe we will go to Belarus and develop ESCA in Belarus. You know, when I think about my name, I believe that my relatives came from Ukraine, and I'm very pleased to invite Mr. Klaus Hafner, who will present the Danish experience in solid waste management. Now I have a question to you, Mr. Hafner. We know good examples how all this could be implemented in Denmark. It's like a fairy tale for us. Could you please describe how this could be done in Ukraine, how to turn 5,500 landfills in Ukraine into...
Come here and talk about the waste incineration in Denmark. Next. I'm coming from the private company Renewable, that is a consultancy company that is working all around the world, and it's based with a headquarter in Denmark. As you can see, we have over 13,000 experts in all kinds of discipline in engineering and also in waste management and waste incineration. And this is my subject here. Next. I will go through these 4 items. As you can see, Danish approach as regards municipal waste solid management, waste strategy, impact on strategy on district heating, and challenges for energy recovery facilities is more general word for all kind of waste management. Yes, next. The Danish approach as regards municipal solid waste management. Next. In 1903, waste management was invented in the Copenhagen in Denmark. 20 years earlier, district heating was first invented, we could say, in New York, in America. But in Copenhagen, we had a big problem with waste as the town of Copenhagen was growing very quickly and the landfill was overfilled. So it was tried to make a waste incineration plant to burn waste in the center of Copenhagen. Please go back. And there the first waste incineration plant was created, and it was a combined heat and power plant at that time. The heat was steam supplied to the hospitals and the kinderhouses, orphanage nearby, and there was a steam turbine with a generator producing electricity for the street lighting and some houses nearby. Later, today, you can see on the right how many waste incineration plants there are in Denmark, covering the whole country, and they're all based on combined heat and power production. And there's a little map, you can see Ukraine also in the red. Yes, next. So, waste incineration has been developed for many years in Denmark. So many of the challenges that other countries are meeting, we have already been dealing with for years ago, so it's easier to develop this area. There was a new policy in 1990 where all plants should go to work on combined heat and power production. And in 1997, all kind of landfill was banned. Okay, there are still landfills in Denmark, in fact around 50, but they are working on closing these landfills as soon as possible. Today, we have combined heat and power production based on waste that is covering about 20% of the district heating in Denmark. And I must say that district heating is very developed in Denmark. It's covering about 60% of the houses in Denmark. And also the electricity produced from the waste production, the waste steam, is covering about 5% of electricity in Denmark. Yes, next. By burning waste, it's possible to reduce the CO2 emissions considerably. However, there are some substances in waste, like plastic, that is, when it's burning, emitting CO2, so it's not completely free of CO2. But it's approximately 10,000 times less emission of CO2 than, for example, burning coal. And due to there are a lot of papers and plastic and so on in Danish waste, they have a high production of both heat and electricity, and also because the facilities are modern and high efficient. However, this strategy of burning everything are we going away from now based on agreement in the EU. More waste are now regarded as resources for reuse and other kind of recycling and so on. So the study is that by 2020, 50% of the households' waste will be recycled instead of incinerated. Yes, next. And here you have the waste treatment in the countries of EU, and you can see the highest column is Denmark, telling that we are maybe producing most waste in Europe, but fortunately we are also either incinerated it, the light blue line, or we are recycling it. So most of the waste are treated in the proper way. You can see the the dark blue color is landfilling, and there's nearly no landfilling today in Denmark. Like you can also see Germany and Sweden and so on have also managed to more or less cancel landfilling. Next. How does the economy look like for a waste incineration plant? There are, of course, huge investment in constructing the waste incineration plants, and there are also some operation and maintenance costs. And therefore, it's an expensive way to go to develop waste incineration. And it's also something that has been considered carefully in Ukraine, where it's possible to develop waste incineration. The economy is based on three columns. It is the gate fee, what people are paid when they come to waste to the gate of the waste incineration plant. It is the income from selling heat to the district heating company, and the income from selling electricity to the grid. Next. I just want to say that the income and the expenses has to be in balance in such a way that the legislation says that it is not allowed for a public waste incineration plant, and the only public waste incineration plants utilities in Denmark, to make profit. So therefore, it is necessary to make a balance between heat sales, electricity sales, and the gate fee. Here is the modern waste incineration plants where Renewable, my company, has been involved in. This has just been built in the center of Copenhagen with a new kind of concept. This building is 85 meters high, and there has been built a ski slope on the top. In fact, a kind of alpine ski slope, as the black type we call, which is very steep. And there's also a restaurant on the top. And of course, the waste from the restaurant can easily be discharged when it's lying on the top of the waste incineration plant. So in that way, this new concept is made to be integrated as a part of the city. Pardon? Yes. And next.
Раз. Ми би дуже хотіли, щоб ця панель була максимально Ага, добре, я зараз повторю.
Okay. The main problem is the cost. And it's very expensive to invest in. But if it's possible to sell electricity, it's mostly possible, but also to sell the heat to a rather big district heating system, then there's income there. The third element to get a gate fee is also possible, but it depends on what is politically available to have of gate fee in Ukraine. So if all these three incomes are working stable, then it's possible to invest in a waste incineration plant. As regards the architecture, it is not especially more expensive to make it as a special design and integrate it in the city. It's just to be open for a new way of thinking. Here you see another waste incineration plant that is covered with aluminum plates with holes in, and inside there's a LED light with different colors, so it looks like a sculpture. It's very huge, and some people complain that this may be too much to have such big waste incineration plant in that way. But interesting. And next, here's a more traditional, modern waste incineration plant. All these plants have a high efficiency, about 95%. There's flue gas condensing, meaning that they're extracting all heat from what is possible also from the flue gases. The waste strategy. Next. There's been a long process from old time in the 70s, where we only were afraid about hazardous waste, until today, where waste is regarded as a resource. In fact, we say now we are planning a future without waste, because waste can fully be regarded as a resource in different ways. So this is a process from many years that has been developed. And it is also according to the long-term targets in the EU. And as Ukraine is associated now to EU, you will have the same challenges in this respect about the future development of waste management. Next.
Пане Клаусе, дещо лякає.
So in the EU, there's a very ambitious plan for 2020 that to change the waste into be regarded as a resource, not only waste. And the waste generated per capita should be on decline. The waste legislation that is standing in what we call the directives in the EU should be implemented as national legislation, and all kind of inner recovery is limited to non-cycle materials. So it's where possible, waste to be recycled, and landfills should be virtually eliminated. In that way, it is possible to develop a sustainable waste management future. And here's some figures telling about this 2020 target. Most of all, preventing waste, preparing for reuse where it's possible, and for recycling. Recycling, that is including producing of heat and power, but reuse is try to extract products which can go back to the industry to be reused. And then there's the last is what is not possible to use in other elements has to be disposed of somehow. At landfills, that is well secured not to pollute the surroundings. Yeah, next. Okay. And here you see the recycling system that the waste were possible to go back to the producers and to the product manufacturers. Yeah, next. So here are some prices telling about the fees, and there's also taxes involved that trying to put the behavior in such a way, to change the behavior in such a way that people are not landfilling it, but put it into waste incineration. Yes, next. And in that way, you can see that the gate fee in Denmark is much more lower than in other countries because it is possible to sell the electricity and sell the heat. As you can see, is PC's production on the very right column. The price is very low. Next. They get, yes, impact on district heating. Just go quickly through the slides. Next. You can see that waste district heating systems cover more than 20%. Here is the whole Danish district heating system put down in one table. Next. In big Copenhagen, there are several waste incineration plants, and you can study it further. Next. And when having waste incineration and other kind of production plants on the same big system as you saw in Copenhagen, they have to work together in what we call a smart grid. So you see here a column from the winter, summer in the middle, where is the low heat demand, and winter again, autumn, winter. And all kinds of production plants has to produce into the same system, and some has to be stored for some while and then produce, and then sent out to the district heating system. So we are getting what we call a smart grid system for all kinds of producers selling heat into the system. Next. Yes, I just want to show this, that it is important to think about how, this is the last one, that how, just back again, how to build in a way such kind of waste incineration so the emissions are minimized. Most of the heat is recovered, and you are having a good relationship to the neighbors despite it is a polluted kind of industry. Yes, thank you.
Дуже дякую.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fafner, let us agree that Mr. Savchuk will present to you those incentives which when we create for your company in Ukraine. Within several years you will build up such incineration plants, and I will prepare my ski and try the ski facility on the roof of these future plants. I am happy to invite Mr. Jean-Christophe Fouillac. You have up to 8 minutes.
Tell us about your energy strategy until 2050, and such strategies are of great interest. What is the difference from Ukrainian approach? What we can borrow from your strategy? Thank you very much.
I have a presentation, but I will try to really focus on energy efficiency, because I've been attentively listening to all the deliberations and presentations this morning. There's been an overwhelming share of them were dedicated to supply side. This is renewables or district heating renovation, so I will attempt to really focus on end-use efficiency. Now, here you see just a slide about the primary energy mix and end use of Switzerland. You will see this is quite different from Ukraine. I mean, a number of things we don't have. First of all, we have a relatively low share of gas, which is not the case in Ukraine. You will also see that we have a relatively low share of industry. We don't have heavy industry, we don't have steel like you have, but we have a lot of small and medium enterprises. You will also see that our energy strategy for 2050 has a number of targets when it comes to efficiency. So basically they are expressed in per capita energy consumption, which have to decline by some given dates. The same with electricity. Следующий, пожалуйста. This is rapidly to illustrate that actually our energy strategy was triggered after Fukushima. Before Fukushima, public opinion in Switzerland was roughly split 50-50 pro and contra nuclear. After Fukushima, the overwhelming majority of the people actually turned against nuclear, and there was simply no prospect anymore to build any nuclear plant in Switzerland, given that any nuclear plant would have ended up in a referendum in order to get a permit. It would take at least a generation until possibly we might find again some sort of 50-50 support or opposition to nuclear. That is why we decided to exit nuclear, and as you will see from this slide, as it took us actually 6 years of parliamentary debates, of stakeholder consultations, and ultimately a referendum by which 58% of the people approved this energy strategy. What I want to express here is that we see policy making not only as a technocratic matter, it also needs to be something which is supported by the people. We have an energy strategy at the national level, but our cantons, that is our provinces, but also many cities do have similar energy strategies at provincial or municipal level. Now, just to come to speak about Ukraine, Switzerland has introduced some 25 years ago a program which is called Energy for the Cities, which is basically a checklist of about 100 criteria, not only in energy, but also urban planning, transportation, waste, water, and so on, by which cities get a tool by which they can plan in a much more sustainable way the development of their urban pattern. And we actually started bringing this tool to Ukraine. It was about 6 or 7 years ago. We started in Vinica, and I think by now Vinica, the city council, is now actually introducing just above 50 of those 100 measures which are in the checklist. And we started also more recently with Zhytomyr, which is also adopting this system. What is also quite unique in the system, which distinguishes it from others like the Covenant of Mayors, is basically once you get an accreditation and a certification, you will lose it after 2 or 3 years if you don't make continuous effort. So no city can rest on its laurels, and every city that qualifies under this system has to make a continuous effort. Next slide. This is very rapidly the challenge which we have in terms of electricity. You see this is a time axis up to 2050. You see that we have about 60% of electricity which is hydro. You see a nuclear phase out. We have 5 nuclear plants. They don't have, unlike in Germany, a set end of operation date, so they may run as long as they are safe. The first one will actually be closed in 2019 for commercial reasons. What is important, the message I want to pass along, is the black line. And here, this is energy consumption, and basically our strategy aims at stabilizing electricity consumption, which is a challenge for advanced economies, because we have more electricity appliances or more use of electricity. We have a lot of heat pumps that are being rolled out, but also electric mobility, will add an additional load to electricity demand, which needs to be compensated by efficiency measures. So bottom line is we do want to stabilize electricity demand. You do see that we will have a transition period, that the build-up of new renewables in Switzerland, it will be mostly solar, biomass, wind, and smaller hydro, although there's not much potential left. That build-up will not be fast enough to cover demand. Now for Switzerland, which is in the middle of Europe and already today is the most interconnected country in Europe, where we have as much electricity crossing our borders, being traded with neighbors according to seasons and day, injection of renewables into the European system, this is not a prime preoccupation. Next slide. This is the same perspectives to 2050, but for overall energy, you do see here electricity stabilizing in blue, but you see the huge potential which we mostly diagnose in heating for buildings, that is the orange, and also in industry, which is in yellow, the natural gas. Next slide. Okay, I will skip this one because it's about renewables. As I said, I want to focus on energy efficiency.
Пане Жане, регламент.
Right. Okay, very rapidly. Mr. Savchuk alluded to a CO2 tax as a possible idea. Now, in Switzerland, we don't have a CO2 tax. You will see the word levy here. What is important, we actually levy it's about 80 euros per ton of CO2. What is important, this money does not go to the budget. The state doesn't get any penny out of this money. The money is being recycled either to households as a refund for the health insurance or to companies as a refund, a partial refund of wage costs. So in theory, someone who does not emit CO2, at the end of the year, he actually gets a revenue for being CO2 free. What is also important is what you see there in orange is actually industries can get exempted from the CO2 tax. Switzerland has always been a proponent of the carrot and stick policy. That is, an industry can enter an agreement with the government to reduce its emissions or increase its energy efficiency. That agreement has to be verifiable, it has to be plausible, and if that company manages to reduce its emissions, it is exempted from the CO2 tax. So a system which is totally out of the treasury of the budget. Next.
Правильно я розумію, що ви
Do you understand correctly that you support the concept? Do you understand it correctly that you support the concept that had been presented? There is translation going. Do you understand you correctly that you support the concept presented by head of Energy Efficiency Agency regarding introduction of target revenues to Energy Efficiency Fund of Enterprising from CO2 and financing modernization of enterprise?
I mean, I heard about this today for the first time. What I mentioned here is just a suggestion. What I think is important is the two features there. It's not in the budget. It's outside the budget, a closed financial loop. And secondly, there's a carrot and stick. So you cannot only penalize enterprises for emitting CO2, you have to give them a chance to reduce their CO2 or to increase their energy efficiency so they can actually wean off. So I think it's those two features. Now, these are just suggestions. Okay, next slide. Okay, and maybe just a last hint is, I know that there's a lot of discussion in Ukraine about tenders for renewables. Switzerland started actually using the same system for energy efficiency projects about 8 years ago. So it works exactly the same as for green energy, we make various rounds of tenders whereby any initiator, an industry or a municipality, can actually submit a project to get some money which is actually funded out of the same system as for renewables. So these are grid surplus tariff. And it's like for a tender, the projects that have the highest return in terms of energy saved per money invested actually win the tender. And we have found this to be a very useful tool, that the creativeness of enterprises in submitting projects has actually been quite astonishing. We never expected that there is actually so many low-hanging fruits in terms of efficiency that can be reaped. I think I will stop here just for the sake of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the presentation, although it's quite interesting. Now I invite Alexander Dyachuk.
Alexander is his PhD in engineering, and please, not more than 5 minutes. I'll try. Thank you for invitation. I would like to present to your attention our vision how Ukraine may implement the Paris Agreement on climate change. All the countries are expected to contribute to the prevention of climate change and prevention temperature growth. Also, the Paris Agreement says that we should reach CO2 neutral economies, and we try to develop such a scenario for Ukraine, which is called Ukraine's transition to the renewable energy by 2050, with support from Heinrich Böll Foundation in Ukraine. I announced it as supported by Heinrich Böll Foundation. Also, we used findings from the Academy of Sciences, which were supported by the USAID projects. This is basic structure of energy system in Ukraine, beginning with this energy saving lamps and ending with the recycling of power. We have offered revolutionary scenario, how we called it. We believe that we have to raise the electricity consumption inside the country. And here on this chart, white column, white squares show positive impact from energy efficiency measures. Of course, the electrification of the Ukrainian economy is needed, just it was needed some 50 years ago, and we call it electrification version 2.0. On the account of what sectors we can considerably decrease energy resources consumption. On the first turn, these are households by 2020, then by agriculture by 40/40, this could be added by transport, and by 2050 industry may contribute much. For industries and for industrial production, which is shown in brown color, we already have some draft laws in the parliamentary pipeline. In transport, we already have some ideas how to stimulate the electric cars use. As for industries, we need to transit into electric energy consumption in many industrial sectors, like in steel production, in cement, glass, lime, etc. production. As for the household consumption, we should transfer to solar energies, energy collectors, biofuels, and also to get biofuels from centralized area. So it says, your slides say revolutionary scenario. What is the essence of this revolution which you stand for? Our word revolutionary scenario suggests that the evolution requires a long period of time, while our today's emergency situation with climate requires revolutionary scenario. Unfortunately, coal burning and coal industry is now in the center of attention because this is the biggest coal emission in CO2 emission in sector. We do not have time keeping in mind the climate, and we have to apply revolutionary, not evolutionary scenarios. Quite often researchers say that humankind have urgently searched for a new planet to survive. As for transport, we should use electrification and also use biofuels. Of course, based on the grounds of sustainable supply and sustainable production. As for services, we should thermally modernize our buildings and to save electric energy and to modernize all the production process in services. In agriculture, we can make better and greater use of biofuels and waste. Also, we have good examples of biogas and biofuel production. Actually, this is very efficient from logistics point of view. The electricity generation could be up to 80% provided from renewables like solar and wind, and some 10% could be contributed by very small solar photo accumulation elements installed on the roofs of residential houses. For heat generation, as it was correctly mentioned, the best solution is to use biomass and waste. Up to 73% of heating can be produced in Ukraine from biomass, but at the same time we should ensure efficient heat consumption, and we try to forecast for the future how much heating will be needed up to 2050. This is general supply of primary energy mix, and our revolutionary scenario suggests that in 2030 we will have just only 23% of energy mix coming from renewables, but the trend is good, and we have to reach up to 73% in 2050. The energy consumption in GDP should be considerably increased. Unfortunately, Ukraine is lagging behind many European countries. That's not due to the lack of experts in energy sector, but we need to reshape our economy. We have to change its structure. We have to substitute energy consuming productions with less energy consuming enterprises, and this would allow us to reach the level of energy consumption and the share of GDP per capita energy consumption as developed countries have today. And so it may take us almost 20 years to reach today's energy intensity of the European Union today. Implementation of this revolutionary scenario would allow us to become more CO2 neutral by the year 2050. Our revolutionary scenario, by the way, would not require not more investment resources than in case we apply very evolution type scenario, that is investing not intensively. That is, we have to invest carefully, we have to allocate available resources carefully, to think carefully about proper energy mix. And in this case, this revolutionary scenario of transit into the renewables will allow us to reach good GDP growth, good per capita income growth, even for the most poor families, because renewables create jobs, and this requires not just more people, but these positions are highly paid usually. We all know that that fossil based energy has been built for 50 years. Today we have to speed up transit into renewable.
Thank you, Alexander. Achieved. Next presenter, Project Manager, Development and Commercialization of Energy Technology and Municipal Sector, UNDP program. Now, I would like to briefly represent your project and what is objective. A lot was mentioned about Paris Agreement and commitment of Ukraine, but we ought to try to reduce green gas emission, and for that UNDP project is implemented. What is our strategy? What we try to implement is Ukraine. First, creating attractive and competitive conditions for conducting business in Ukraine. optimizing and simplifying administrative procedure. In particular, many domestic and foreign investors face it. What we want that these procedures not hamper them, but rather attract them. Separate item, development and support to banking institutions for them to finance energy projects. And we have already implemented 12 pilot projects. In the end, I will tell you something about them. The needs that we identified in Ukraine that require urgent changes. Many legislative changes have been initiated and approved. Many more of them are still under consideration in Parliament, but we hope that in general, market of bioresources, energy efficiency and renewables market will start functioning effectively. To make your presentation more interesting, tell us openly what you personally think gave maximum possible impact for development of energy efficiency from legislation that has been adopted and what is under consideration of Parliament that promoted. Then I come back to previous slide. Simplification of administrative procedures. Since summer of this year, new legislation was enforced. Development of documents for any budgetary institution, all the assessment procedure take minimum 11 months. Implementation of bioenergy project takes a year or a year and a half. When talking about prompt changes in Ukraine, we must reduce these administrative procedures, not extend them. So you need change 2 years into half a year minimum. What we want that these are effective period. Is this draft law to optimize this period in Parliament? We are working on that. Our project does not have the initiative to initiate the law, but we are working on that. We provide explanation and help to draft the laws. Unfortunately, we cannot put forward draft laws. A particular item that I was to focus attention, development of regional programs. It's very important when regions, cities, and Ukraine as a whole understand the strategy that we are implementing, what we want to achieve, what energy balance will be achieved in each region. Not talking in too much detail, I want to say that it was repeated here many times. You should learn from experience of previous projects, not only in Ukraine, but abroad as well. Based on this strategy, including UN strategy, one special item is lessons learned, getting maximum information about projects that are being implemented, positive changes achieved in other countries to avoid making same critical mistakes that made this project ineffective. Would like to mention mechanism of financial support that we are elaborating jointly with the World Bank in Ukraine. Support for municipalities, providing them the possibility to get credits without collateral, which could be opening a new niche in banking sector. We have a working group that is working on that. After analyzing the data, we concluded that this need of municipalities in such project is more than 10 billion euro. but the state support provided nowadays does not allow to implement this project in short-term perspective. When reviewing experience of such project implementation, we're using this financial mechanism in European countries, in EU countries in particular. What they use for energy efficiency project and renewable project. Municipalities normally use their own money, very actively involve credit financing, use to a lesser extent also ESCO companies and other types of financing. I would like to mention separately those municipalities that get credit resources. You see that up to now, people on the one hand are afraid of taking these credits. On the other hand, we don't have a reliable mechanism how to assess all the risks that municipality can create for banking sector. And Ukraine has very different figures from most of European countries have. Jointly with the World Bank and Oshad Bank, we developed a new credit product. We are now trying to finalize it. And again, coming back to the question asked by Alexei, how to reduce all these time periods. Even reviewing some credit agreement takes years, and many municipalities face such a problem. What could be the desirable terms for the credit agreement? We expect that it should take maximum 3 months. What we suggest, how to reduce the period, please explain. Is that a credit from whom? From international financial institution to local government for local guarantees? Non-collateral credit to municipality from state-run bank using the state money from Oshad Bank, but take into account huge potential and the need that municipalities have to get such credit money. According to different estimates, they need from 30 billion euro and more. In the future, we shall try to attract international financial organizations to provide money for this mechanism. Do you understand correctly that soon this mechanism starts working when any municipality can go to Oshad Bank asking for credit that they will get without collateral with what interest rate? It is a commercial product that we are trying to launch, so with normal interest rate. Nowadays, none of banking institution can provide credit less than interest rate established. What we want, that this rate is within the limit of 3%. Credit in hryvnias is maximum 16%. With the terms or payback that energy projects always have, it is quite attractive. But I would like to speak separately on such a fact. Since such credits will be without collateral, one of the main conditions is allocating credit rating to a municipality to assess its readiness to fulfill commitments, its solvency, and its possibility to manage finance. A system that is used with 7 municipalities in order that collateral is not covered. So conditions will be 16 annual interest and make a decision on financing in 6 months. There will be many more advantages, but when I start telling you in detail what benefits are, well, it will take time. I missed many tries. When will your product start working? Nowadays, we are drafting memorandum to sign with first municipality in Ukraine. We plan to launch it maximum by the end of this year. We signed memorandum with the town Kanyev, Cherkasy region. Please show very last slide. Since we are given examples of use of different technologies, different approaches, 12 implemented projects that we realized in municipalities, Uman, Zhytomyr, Kyiv, and Donetsk region. By using straw pellets and installation of biofuel boiler station, during the previous heating season we saved a lot. So consumption was 5 times less. Thank you very much indeed.
As far as I understood, you actually presented new model of the Ashad Bank funding, which offers green credits to municipalities. What is the difference? We jointly with the World Bank develop credit products which could not compete with the other products. Moreover, we partner with the Ukrgazbank in this area. We need to introduce market conditions for businesses in Ukraine to allow business make predictions about its development in Ukraine. Today we offer loans, credits for municipalities. Actually, this is, as of today, minimal market. By now, municipalities do not involve credit resources. In order to change the situation, in order to allow municipalities to get the credit resources and not to increase credit burden on state budget, we decided to offer such credit lines for municipal funds. I believe that you should approach to the state agency on energy efficiency because it has the information about municipalities which can benefit the most from what you offer. Thank you very much. And now the last presenter in this panel, Mr. Mark Drake, Industrial Development Officer from UNIDO.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I have the honor to be the last speaker, so I will try to be focused and specific. We've heard already many interesting things from the panel. Now, what I want to do is say a few words about UNIDO, our approach, then talk a little bit about what we are doing now, and also what our plans are in the future for Ukraine in the area of energy. Let me try to. For those who don't know UNIDO, we are the Industrial Development Organization of the UN. Our focus is inclusive and sustainable industrial development. That's a long word that basically means that we, in every single technical cooperation project that we do, we aim to support the local economy. We want to make the economy more competitive, and we want to do that in a way that has respect for the environment and also for vulnerable groups in the society. That is the social inclusion part, and these 3 pillars are the 3 pillars of sustainable development. Next one slide. Sustainable development goals, I'm sure you know them, all 17. The main one for us is the number 9, focusing on innovation, infrastructure, and industry, but our projects have direct or indirect benefits for climate action, for access to energy, for partnerships, for sustainable cities, and a number of others. Next one, please. Next slide, please. Number of projects. We are active around the world. We have been in Ukraine for about 10 years now, so I think we can contribute a bit of our experience, and what we try to do especially is to see how the expertise that comes out of these other countries, the projects that we are running there in spheres of energy efficiency, renewables, sustainable cities, clean tech innovation, to feed that back into our new projects to make sure that we have a maximum impact. Next one, please. Renewable energy, energy efficiency, and climate policy and networks. These are our three main pillars, and depending on the priorities of the government, depending on the needs of the economy and the society, we bring those pillars together whenever we design new projects in consultation with the main stakeholders. Next one. Oh, I cannot. Okay, yes, I see. Yeah, it's fine. Okay. No, it's good. I was momentarily confused because it's not the right slide, but it's okay. I can talk about it. This is the present ongoing project, which is funded by the Global Environment Facility, and it's a project that is focusing on the agro-food sector and how can we make sure that energy efficiency and renewable energy applications are taken up in that sector. And we are doing that through three different pillars, if you want. The slides are missing, but I can explain it in 2 minutes. The main one, that is the most visible one, is pilot demonstration projects. How can you convince a society and an enterprise that something is working, is by showing that in a real life situation that both financially and technically it makes sense. That is what we have done, and we will continue to do in a number of industrial enterprises. We have energy efficiency measures in an industrial bakery. We have biodiesel production in a large farm enterprise. We have LED lighting systems which save 40 to 60% of energy in a number of warehouses. We have biomass boilers in wood processing enterprises and a number of others. Now, this is important, as I said. Seeing is believing. You have to show that this works. But this is not the goal in itself of this project. This is just the first step. What we want to achieve at the end of this project is that it can keep on rolling by itself, that this can replicate throughout the sectors. And in order to do that, we have tried to assist the government partners, including the state agency, in helping them to bring international best practice for new policies, and we will continue to do so. So I'm actually quite interested to understand the instrument that has been discussed on carbon initiatives, because there is a lot of information out there on how you can best design those instruments. So policy is an important angle to make sure that you can replicate these kind of technologies. The other element is also capacity building. How can you make sure that all the training that we have provided to industry, to academia, to research institute, that keeps on going? And we have done that by establishing, institutionalizing these curricula in a number of 2-3 universities, and that it can keep on rolling. We have developed guidebooks and tools and so on that can keep on being used, business plan development, financial analysis, and so on. That is this project, JEF4 project. It will end by the mid of next year, and we aim to then hand it over to the national partners. Next slide, please. I now want to have a brief look at the future in a sense of a new project that we are currently designing, and it is called the Global Clean Tech Innovation Program. It's a program that is interesting in a sense that we have been running it as UNIDO over the past 5 years in cooperation with the JEF. Again, the Global Environment Facility is the donor for it. It has been running in Armenia, in Thailand, South Africa, Malaysia, India, Pakistan, Morocco, Turkey. I think I covered them all now. And Ukraine is now joining as well, and we're very excited about that. And the idea of this project is that we believe there is so much innovation, ideas in every single society, including in Ukraine. And the scope, the objective of this project will be to bring these ideas from out of the minds of people and assist them, the best ones, the most promising one, to turn them into viable businesses. That is what we want to do under this project. So make those business ideas, based on new technology and innovative technology in the area of renewables, in the area of energy efficiency and a number of others, to turn them, make them sharper, marketing-wise, business-wise, technology validation-wise, and then expose them to the financial community and make sure that they are turned into viable businesses and create jobs. So I mentioned these are the current countries joining, and Ukraine is joining there as well. Next one, please. I will not go into the detail, but I'm sure this presentation will be shared, and then you can see some of the examples in the countries that we have been working on and which have actually gained a lot of exposure and financing from venture capital, and not from the countries themselves, but then from international investors. Can be European, can be American, can be others. Next one, please. A number of figures. I will not go through it for the sake of time, but again, these pillars are important, that we want environmental sustainability, because all of this reduces the emissions of greenhouse gas. But we want to create jobs, and we want to create the revenues. Without that, the environmental sustainability cannot be an objective in itself. Next one, please. GSIP Ukraine. As I said, this is a project that we are currently designing. Between now and the summer of next year, we will decide together with government, together with academia, together with the investment community, how we can best focus the role and the ambition of this program. And then by the summer of next year, we will consolidate all of that, submit it to the donor, and then we aim by the end of next year to actually roll out this project. One more thing, final thing, we have, some of you may have heard about the Vienna Energy Forum. It's a platform, a big event that we organize in Vienna. Until now we did it every 2 years, but we are increasing the frequency, because we will have one more next year, even though we had one this year as well. This shows, I believe, the relevance of the Energy Forum, and those of you that have attended will know that the number of people that attending has been increasing, and we will organize this 14-15 May of next year in Vienna, and you're almost welcome to discuss a number of those things with partners from around the world. I hope I was able to keep it short enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Drake. We will attend this forum. Ladies and gentlemen, now our panel is over. We have made good use of our time, and now I would like to mention that we have established good relations with the Energy Efficiency Fund from Moldova Republic, and now we are signing a memorandum on cooperation with this agency, and I invite Mr. Sergei Savchuk and Executive CEO Sergio Kori.